one of the most powerful tools a fair trade business has is telling their story. And that whole notion of what's, very common now, transparency, getting the faces of their workers and the impact out there is probably one of the biggest selling points fair trade businesses have. People who are not helping their workers in production aren't telling a story because maybe they're trying to cover up the conditions for their workers. So that's probably one of the strongest components for most fair trade businesses, is to get that story out, to get the face, to get the impact of purchases on those in terms of how they market their products. I mean, you can have a variety of unsuccessful businesses, either fair trade or, if we're going to call it traditional, can falter because of, quality control, inventory management, a whole array of business practices that can either help a business succeed or not. But I don't think there's anything specific to fair trade businesses that put them at a disadvantage than other good, business practices. There are some opportunities for fair trade businesses in the area of apparel. I think there's been enough information out about, first of all, we don't really produce hardly any apparel in the U.S. anymore. So unless we know how that's produced some other place, we need to look for ethically produced products. So I think apparel is one. I think electronics is another one. I want to say I think that we should be talking beyond just a fair trade business, because someone can go into a socially conscious business that maybe there's no certification for fair trade anymore. That doesn't mean that you can't operate with still using fair trade principles. And I think that's where the whole movement of fair trade partners up with kind of sweat-free apparel. We see in terms of electronics a whole strategy to bring ethically sourced components to electronics, making sure that, I think they're calling it conflict-free electronics, so that the components of electronics are not sourced in a place that's a war zone, where people are being harmed in the extraction of products in mining, for example. So I think fair trade and ethically sourced products are kind of partnering up now, because for a lot of products there's not a certification. That doesn't mean that somebody can't follow the principles of fair trade and go into any business. I think there's a growing awareness among students about how the work they go into interfaces with environmental issues. Right now, we're at a critical moment when really the survival of the planet is on the horizon. People are concerned with climate change. Will the next generation be able to have enough food, sustain themselves through the use of non-fossil fuels? So the motivation for students, I think, to move into a business that holds to fair trade principles is based on hope for the future. That, in fact, we can't continue to live and work and do business without taking the rest of the planet under consideration. And I think the environmental movement has captured that most strongly. The planet is a living organism. You have communities in other parts of the world that can't feed their families, kids can't go to school, they don't have enough water. That affects the whole human family, one way or another, whether we see it every day or not, it's going to have an impact. So I think the strongest motivation really is, concern for the sustaining of the planet. Well, some of the fair trade universities kind of grow and connect. So we have Dominican University, we have DePaul University, we have Loyola that are all looking at meeting the requirements to become fair trade universities through their procurement, through their educational programs for students. It might be very interesting to have a collaboration among those business schools as well and say, how do we have a track here that helps steer our students into businesses that embody the very principles that our universities were founded upon. As I've seen universities develop their strategies for fair trade on campus, one of the things I think that seems obvious but isn't attended to is that they don't really make students aware of their own strategies for how they are institutional consumers. So I've met with universities that talk about, we'll do an educational event for students around World Fair Trade Day. But I said, well, I've been on this campus and none of your students know that you're now procuring fair trade coffee in your food service. Who knows that? How do you let students know that you're making ethical decisions all the time about how you purchase? So that could be something included in the orientation materials for students coming on campus that says, we take our mission here very seriously and the values of our institution, and we're going to show you how those play out in how we live every day and how we consume. That could include, how we care for the earth through recycling. It could include how we procure products for our university. It could be signage in food service that says, do you know that, farmers got a fair wage by the coffee that you're drinking? I don't think some of those simple marketing kinds of strategies have been used on campus to help the students really know decisions that the universities are making. So I've encouraged some of those. Some student groups are planning things around World Fair Trade Day or Earth Day, looking at products from, something as every day now as Ben & Jerry's ice cream is working towards 100% fair trade ice cream, certified ice cream, I think by 2014, and that means all their ingredients that can be fair trade would be certified fair trade. Well, most students don't know that. So to try to help them connect, and then that inspires them as students to be conscious consumers as well. There are a number of, the Chicago Community Loan Fund that I think look at providing loans and resources to companies that have a social mission as well. So I think probably there's some additional resources out there. But unfortunately, we don't really have a center that's brought all those resources together. That would be a great dream, I think.